5. Rip. I grit my teeth as Vinia, a woman with aqua hair and gold tattoos above her eyebrows, yanks a strip of fabric from my leg, tearing out the hair beneath it. Sorry, she pipes in her silly capital accent. You're just so hairy. Why do these people speak in such a high pitch? Why do their jaws barely open when they talk? Why do the ends of their sentences go up as if they're asking a question? Odd vowels, clipped words, and always a hiss on the letter S. No wonder it's impossible not to mimic them. Vinia makes what's supposed to be a sympathetic face. Good news, though. This is the last one. Ready? I get a grip on the edges of the table I'm seated on and nod. The final swath of my leg hair is uprooted in a painful jerk. I've been in the remake centre for more than 3 hours and I still haven't met my stylist. Apparently he has no interest in seeing me until Vinia and the other members of my prep team have addressed some obvious problems. This has included scrubbing down my body with a gritty foam that has removed not only dirt but at least 3 layers of skin, turning my nails into uniform shapes and primarily ridding my body of hair. My legs, arms, torso, underarms, and parts of my eyebrows have been stripped of the stuff, leaving me like a plucked bird, ready for roasting. I don't like it. My skin feels sore and tingly and intensely vulnerable. But I have kept my side of the bargain with Hamish, and no objection has crossed my lips. You're doing very well, says some guy named Flavius. He gives his orange corkscrew locks a shake and applies a fresh coat of purple lipstick to his mouth. If there's one thing that we can't stand, it's a whiner. Grease her down. Vinia and Octavia, a plump woman whose entire body has been dyed a pale shade of pea green, rub me down with a lotion that first stings but then soothes my raw skin. Then they pull me from the table, removing the thin robe I've been allowed to wear off and on. I stand there completely naked as the 3 circle me, wielding tweezers to remove any last bits of hair. I know I should be embarrassed, but they're so unlike people that I'm no more self-conscious than if a trio of oddly coloured birds were pecking around my feet. The 3 step back and admire their work. Excellent, you almost look like a human being now, says Flavius, and they all laugh. I force my lips up into a smile to show how grateful I am. Thank you, I say sweetly. We don't have much cause to look nice in District 12. This wins them over completely. Of course you don't, you poor darling, says Octavia, clasping her hands together in distress for me. But don't worry, says Vinia. By the time Cinna is through with you, you're going to be absolutely gorgeous. We promise. You know now that we've got rid of all the hair and filth, you're not horrible at all, says Flavius encouragingly. Let's call Cinna. They dart out of the room. It's hard to hate my prep team. They're such total idiots, and yet, in an odd way, I know they're sincerely trying to help me. I look at the cold white walls and floor and resist the impulse to retrieve my robe. But this Cinna, my stylist, will surely make me remove it at once. Instead, my hands go to my hairdo, the one area of my body my prep team had been told to leave alone. My fingers stroke the silky braids my mother so carefully arranged. My mother. I left her blue dress and shoes on the floor of my train car, never thinking about retrieving them, of trying to hold on to a piece of her, of home. Now I wish I had. The door opens and a young man who must be Cinna enters. I'm taken aback by how normal he looks. Most of the stylists they interview on television are so dyed, stenciled, and surgically altered, they're grotesque. But Cinna's close-cropped hair appears to be its natural shade of brown. He's in a simple black shirt and trousers. The only concession to self-alteration seems to be metallic gold eyeliner that has been applied with a light hand. It brings out the flecks of gold in his green eyes. And despite my disgust with the capital and their hideous fashions, I can't help thinking how attractive it looks. Hello, Katniss. I'm Cinna, your stylist. he says in a quiet voice, somewhat lacking in the capital's affectations. Hello, I venture cautiously. Just give me a moment, all right? He asks. He walks around my naked body, not touching me, but taking in every centimetre of it with his eyes. I resist the impulse to cross my arms over my chest. Who did your hair? My mother, I say. It's beautiful. Classic, really. And an almost perfect balance with your profile. She has very clever fingers, he says. I had expected someone flamboyant, someone older trying desperately to look young, someone who viewed me as a piece of meat to be prepared for a platter. Cinna has met none of these expectations. You're new, aren't you? I don't think I've seen you before, I say. Most of the stylists are familiar, constants in the ever-changing pool of tributes. Some have been around my whole life. Yes, this is my first year in the games, says Cinna. So they give you District 12, I say. Newcomers generally end up with us, the least desirable district. I asked for District 12, he says without further explanation. Why don't you put on your robe and we'll have a chat? Pulling on my robe, I follow him through a door into a sitting room. 2 red couches face each other over a low table. 3 walls are blank, the 4th is entirely glass, providing a window to the city. I can see by the light that it must be around noon, although the sunny sky has turned overcast. Cinna invites me to sit on one of the couches and takes his place across from me. He presses a button on the side of the table. The top splits and from below rises a second tabletop that holds our lunch. Chicken and chunks of oranges cooked in a creamy sauce, laid on a bed of pearly white grain, tiny green peas and onions, rolls shaped like flowers, and for dessert, a pudding the colour of honey. I try to imagine assembling this meal myself back home. Chickens are too expensive, but I could make do with a wild turkey. I'd need to shoot a second turkey to trade for an orange. Goat's milk would have to substitute for cream. We can grow peas in the garden. I'd have to get wild onions from the woods. I don't recognise the grain. Our own tessera ration cooks down to an unattractive brown mush. Fancy rolls would mean another trade with the baker, perhaps for 2 or 3 squirrels. As for the pudding, I can't even guess what's in it. Days of hunting and gathering for this one meal, and even then it would be a poor substitute for the capital version. What must it be like, I wonder, to live in a world where food appears at the press of a button? How would I spend the hours I now commit to combing the woods for sustenance if it were so easy to come by? What do they do all day, these people in the capital, besides decorating their bodies and waiting around for a new shipment of tributes to roll in and die for their entertainment? I look up and find Cinna's eyes trained on mine. How despicable we must seem to you, he says. Has he seen this in my face or somehow read my thoughts? He's right, though. The whole rotten lot of them is despicable. No matter, says Cinna. So, Katniss, about your costume for the opening ceremonies. My partner, Portia, is the stylist for your fellow tribute, Peeta, and our current thought is to dress you in complementary costumes, says Cinna. As you know, it's customary to reflect the flavour of the district. For the opening ceremonies, you're supposed to wear something that suggests your district's principal industry. District 11, agriculture. District 4, fishing. District 3, factories. This means that coming from District 12, Peeta and I will be in some kind of coal miners get-up. Since the baggy miners' jumpsuits are not particularly becoming, our tributes usually end up in skimpy outfits and hats with headlamps. One year our tributes were stark naked and covered in black powder to represent coal dust. It's always dreadful and does nothing to win favour with the crowd. I prepare myself for the worst. So I'll be in a coal miner's outfit, I ask, hoping it won't be indecent. Not exactly. You see, Portia and I think that coal miner thing's very overdone. No one will remember you in that. And we both see it as our job to make the District 12 tributes unforgettable, says Cinna. I'll be naked for sure, I think. So rather than focus on the coal mining itself, we're going to focus on the coal, says Cinna. Naked and covered in black dust, I think. And what do we do with coal? We burn it, says Cinna. You're not afraid of fire, are you, Katniss? He sees my expression and grins. A few hours later, I am dressed in what will either be the most sensational or the deadliest costume in the opening ceremonies. I'm in a simple black unitard that covers me from ankle to neck. Shiny leather boots lace up to my knees. But it's the fluttering cape made of steams of orange, yellow, and red, and the matching headpiece that define this costume. Cinna plans to set them on fire just before our chariot rolls into the streets. It's not real flame, of course, just a little synthetic fire Portia and I came up with. You'll be perfectly safe, he says, but I'm not convinced I won't be perfectly barbecued by the time we reach the city's centre. My face is relatively clear of makeup, just a bit of highlighting here and there. My hair has been brushed out and then braided down my back in my usual style. I want the audience to recognize you when you're in the arena, says Cinna dreamily. Katniss, the girl who was on fire. It crosses my mind that Cinna's calm and normal demeanour masks a complete madman. Despite this morning's revelation about Peeta's character, I'm actually relieved when he shows up, dressed in an identical costume. He should know about fire, being a baker's son and all. His stylist, Portia, and her team accompany him, and everyone is absolutely giddy with excitement over what a splash we'll make, except Cinna. He just seems a bit weary as he accepts congratulations. We're whisked down to the bottom level of the Remake Centre, which is essentially a gigantic stable. The opening ceremonies are about to start. Pairs of tributes are being loaded into chariots pulled by teams of 4 horses. Ours are coal black. The animals are so well trained, no one even needs to guide their reins. Cinna and Portia direct us into the chariot and carefully arrange our body positions, the drape of our capes, before moving off to consult with each other. What do you think, I whisper to Peeta, about the fire? I'll rip off your cape if you'll rip off mine, he says, through gritted teeth. Deal, I say. Maybe if we can get them off soon enough, we'll avoid the worst burns. It's bad, though. They'll throw us into the arena no matter what condition we're in. I know we promised Haymitch we'd do exactly what they said, but I don't think he considered this angle. Where is Haymitch anyway? Isn't he supposed to protect us from this sort of thing, says Peeta. With all that alcohol in him, it's probably not advisable to have him around an open flame, I say. And suddenly we're both laughing. I guess we're both so nervous about the games and, more pressingly, petrified of being turned into human torches, we're not acting sensibly. The opening music begins. It's easy to hear blasted around the capital. Massive doors slide open, revealing the crowd-lined streets. The ride lasts about 20 minutes and ends up at the city circle, where they will welcome us, play the anthem, and escort us into the training centre, which will be our home/prison until the games begin. The tributes from District 1 ride out in a chariot, pulled by snow-white horses. They look so beautiful, spray-painted silver, in tasteful tunics glittering with jewels. District 1 makes luxury items for the capital. You can hear the roar of the crowd. They are always favourites. District 2 gets into position to follow them. In no time at all, we are approaching the door, and I can see that between the overcast sky and evening hour, the light is turning grey. The tributes from District 11 are just rolling out when Cinna appears with a lighted torch. Here we go then, he says, and before we can react, he sets our capes on fire. I gasp, waiting for the heat, but there's only a faint tickling sensation. Cinna climbs up before us and ignites our headdresses. He lets out a sigh of relief. It works. Then he gently tucks a hand under my chin. Remember, heads high, smiles. They're going to love you. Cinna jumps off the chariot and has one last idea. He shouts something up at us, but the music drowns him out. He shouts again and gestures. What's he saying? I ask Peeta for the first time. I look at him and realise that ablaze with the fake flames he is dazzling, and I must be too. I think he said for us to hold hands, says Peeta. He grabs my right hand in his left, and we look to Cinna for confirmation. He nods and gives a thumbs up, and that's the last thing I see before we enter the city. The crowd's initial alarm at our appearance quickly changes to cheers and shouts of District 12. Every head is turned our way, pulling the focus from the 3 chariots ahead of us. At first I'm frozen, but then I catch sight of us on a large television screen and am floored by how breathtaking we look. In the deepening twilight, the firelight illuminates our faces. We seem to be leaving a trail of fire off the flowing capes. Cinna was right about the minimal makeup. We both look more attractive but utterly recognisable. Remember, heads high, smiles, they're going to love you. I hear Cinna's voice in my head. I lift my chin a bit higher, put on my most winning smile and wave with my free hand. I'm glad now I have Peter to clutch for balance. He is so steady, solid as a rock. As I gain confidence, I actually blow a few kisses to the crowd. The people of the capital are going nuts, showering us with flowers, shouting our names, our first names, which they have bothered to find on the programme. The pounding music, the cheers, the admiration work their way into my blood, and I can't suppress my excitement. Cinna has given me a great advantage. No one will forget me. Not my look, not my name, Katniss, the girl who was on fire. For the first time, I feel a flicker of hope rising up in me. Surely there must be one sponsor willing to take me on. And with a little extra help, some food, the right weapon, why should I count myself out of the games? Someone throws me a red rose. I catch it, give it a delicate sniff and blow a kiss back in the general direction of the giver. 100 hands reach up to catch my kiss as if it were a real and tangible thing. Katniss, Katniss. I can hear my name being called from all sides. Everyone wants my kisses. It's not until we enter the city circle that I realise I must have completely stopped the circulation in Peter's hand. That's how tightly I've been holding it. I look down at our linked fingers as I loosen my grasp, but he regains his grip on me. No, don't let go of me, he says. The firelight flickers off his blue eyes. Please, I might fall out of this thing. Okay, I say. So I keep holding on, but I can't help feeling strange about the way Cinna has linked us together. It's not really fair to present us as a team and then lock us into the arena to kill each other. The 12 chariots fill the loop of the city circle. On the buildings that surround the circle, every window is packed with the most prestigious citizens of the capital. Our horses pull our chariot right up to President Snow's mansion, and we come to a halt. The music ends with a flourish. The president, a small, thin man with paper white hair, gives the official welcome from a balcony above us. It is traditional to cut away to the faces of the tributes during the speech, but I can see on the screen that we are getting way more than our share of airtime. The darker it becomes, the more difficult it is to take your eyes off our flickering. When the national anthem plays, they do make an effort to do a quick cut around to each pair of tributes, but the camera holds on the District 12 chariot as it parades around the circle one final time and disappears into the training centre. The doors have only just shut behind us when we're engulfed by the prep teams, who are nearly unintelligible as they babble out praise. As I glance around, I notice a lot of the other tributes are shooting us dirty looks, which confirms what I've suspected. We've literally outshone them. Then Cinna and Portia are there, helping us down from the chariot, carefully removing our flaming capes and headdresses. Portia extinguishes them with some kind of spray from a canister. I realise I'm still glued to Peter and force my stiff fingers to open. We both massage our hands. Thanks for keeping hold of me. I was getting a little shaky there, says Peter. It didn't show, I tell him. I'm sure no one noticed. I'm sure they didn't notice anything but you. You should wear flames more often, he says. They suit you. And then he gives me a smile that seems so genuinely sweet with just the right touch of shyness. That unexpected warmth rushes through me. A warning bell goes off in my head. Don't be so stupid. Peter is planning how to kill you, I remind myself. He is luring you in to make you easy prey. The more likeable he is, the more deadly he is. But because two can play at this game, I stand on tiptoe and kiss his cheek, right on his bruise. 6. The training centre has a tower designed exclusively for the tributes and their teams. This will be our home until the actual games begin. Each district has an entire floor. You simply step into an elevator and press the number of your district. Easy enough to remember. I've ridden the elevator a couple of times in the Justice Building back in District 12. Once to receive the medal for my father's death, and then yesterday to say my final goodbyes to my friends and family. But that's a dark and creaky thing that moves like a snail and smells of sour milk. The walls of this elevator are made of crystal so that you can watch the people on the ground floor shrink to ants as you shoot up into the air. It's exhilarating, and I'm tempted to ask Effie Trinket if we can ride it again, but somehow that seems childish. Apparently Effie Trinket's duties did not conclude at the station. She and Hamish will be overseeing us right into the arena. In a way, that's a plus, because at least she can be counted on to corral us around to places on time, whereas we haven't seen Hamish since he agreed to help us on the train. Probably passed out somewhere. Effie Trinket, on the other hand, seems to be flying high. We're the first team she's ever chaperoned that made a splash at the opening ceremonies. She's complimentary about not just our costumes, but how we conducted ourselves. And to hear her tell it, Effie knows everyone who's anyone in the capital and has been talking us up all day trying to win us sponsors. I've been very mysterious, though, she says, her eyes squinted half shut, because of course Hamish hasn't bothered to tell me your strategies, but I've done my best with what I had to work with. How Katniss sacrificed herself for her sister, how you've both successfully struggled to overcome the barbarism of your district. Barbarism? That's ironic coming from a woman helping to prepare us for a slaughter. And what's she basing our success on? Our table manners? Everyone has their reservations, naturally. You being from the coal district, but I said, and this was very clever of me, I said, well, if you put enough pressure on coal, it turns to pearls. Effie beams at us so brilliantly that we have no choice but to respond enthusiastically to her cleverness, even though it's wrong. Coal doesn't turn to pearls, they grow in shellfish. Possibly she meant coal turns to diamonds, but that's untrue too. I've heard they have some sort of machine in District 1 that can turn graphite into diamonds, but we don't mine graphite in District 12. That was part of District 13's job until they were destroyed. I wonder if the people she's been plugging us to all day either know or care. Unfortunately, I can't seal the sponsor deals for you. Only Hamish can do that, says Effie grimly. But don't worry, I'll get him to the table at gunpoint if necessary. Although lacking in many departments, Effie Trinket has a certain determination I have to admire. My quarters are larger than our entire house back home. They are plush like the train car, but also have so many automatic gadgets that I'm sure I won't have time to press all the buttons. The shower alone has a panel with more than 100 options you can choose, regulating water temperature, pressure, soaps, shampoos, scents, oils, and massaging sponges. When you step out on a mat, heaters come on that blow dry your body. Instead of struggling with the knots in my wet hair, I merely place my hand on a box that sends a current through my scalp, untangling, parting, and drying my hair almost instantly. It floats down around my shoulders in a glossy curtain. I program the wardrobe for an outfit to my taste. The windows zoom in and out on parts of the city at my command. You need only whisper a type of food from a gigantic menu into a mouthpiece and it appears hot and steamy before you in less than a minute. I walk around the room eating goose liver and puffy bread until there's a knock on the door. Effie's calling me to dinner. Good, I'm starving. Peter, Cinna and Portia are standing out on a balcony that overlooks the capital when we enter the dining room. I'm glad to see the stylists, particularly after I hear that Hamish will be joining us. A meal presided over by just Effie and Hamish is bound to be a disaster. Besides, dinner isn't really about food. It's about planning out our strategies, and Cinna and Portia have already proven how valuable they are. A silent young man dressed in a white tunic offers us all stemmed glasses of wine. I think about turning mine down, but I've never had wine, except the homemade stuff my mother uses for coughs. And when will I get the chance to try it again? I take a sip of the tart, dry liquid and secretly think it could be improved by a few spoonfuls of honey. Hamish shows up just as dinner is being served. It looks as if he's had his own stylist because he's clean and groomed and about as sober as I've ever seen him. He doesn't refuse the offer of wine, but when he starts in on his soup, I realise it's the first time I've ever seen him eat. Maybe he really will pull himself together long enough to help us. Cinna and Portia seem to have a civilising effect on Hamish and Effie. At least they're addressing each other decently, and they both have nothing but praise for our stylist's opening act. While they make small talk, I concentrate on the meal. Mushroom soup, bitter greens with tomatoes the size of peas, rare roast beef sliced as thin as paper, noodles in a green sauce, cheese that melts on your tongue served with sweet blue grapes. The servers, all young people dressed in white tunics like the one who gave us wine, move wordlessly to and from the table, keeping the platters and glasses full. About halfway through my glass of wine, my head starts to feel foggy, so I change to water instead. I don't like the feeling and hope it wears off soon. How Hamish can stand walking around like this full time is a mystery. I try to focus on the talk, which has turned to our interview costumes, when a girl sets a gorgeous-looking cake on the table and deftly lights it. It blazes up and then the flames flicker around the edges a while, until it finally goes out. I have a moment of doubt. What makes it burn? Is it alcohol? I say, looking up at the girl. That's the last thing I would... Oh, I know you. I can't place a name or time to the girl's face, but I'm certain of it. The dark red hair, the striking features, the porcelain white skin. But even as I utter the words, I feel my insides contracting with anxiety and guilt at the sight of her, and while I can't pull it up, I know some bad memory is associated with her. The expression of terror that crosses her face only adds to my confusion and unease. She shakes her head in denial quickly and hurries away from the table. When I look back, the four adults are watching me like hawks. Don't be ridiculous, Katniss. How could you possibly know an avox? Snaps Effie. The very thought. What's an avox? I ask stupidly. Someone who committed a crime. They cut her tongue so she can't speak, says Hamish. She's probably a traitor of some sort. Not likely to ignore. And even if you did, you're not to speak to one of them unless it's to give an order, says Effie. Of course, you don't really know her. But I do know her, and now that Hamish has mentioned the word traitor, I remember from where. The disapproval is so high I could never admit it. No, I guess not. I stammer, and the wine is not helping. Peter snaps his fingers. Deli Cartwright. That's who it is. I kept thinking she looked familiar as well. Then I realised she's a dead ringer for Deli. Deli Cartwright is a pasty-faced, lumpy girl with yellowish hair who looks about as much like our server as a beetle does a butterfly. She may also be the friendliest person on the planet. She smiles constantly at everybody in school, even me. I have never seen the girl with the red hair smile, but I jump on Peter's suggestion gratefully. Of course, that's who I was thinking of. It must be the hair, I say. Something about the eyes too, says Peter. The energy at the table relaxes. Oh well, if that's all it is, says Cinna. And yes, the cake has spirits, but all the alcohol has burned off. I ordered it specially in honour of your fiery debut. We eat the cake and move into a sitting room to watch the replay of the opening ceremonies that's being broadcast. A few of the other couples make a nice impression, but none of them can hold a candle to us. Even our own party lets out an ah as they show us coming out of the remake centre. Whose idea was the hand-holding? Asks Hamish. Cinna's, says Portia. Just the perfect touch of rebellion, says Hamish. Very nice. Rebellion? I have to think about that one a moment. But when I remember the other couples standing stiffly apart, never touching or acknowledging each other, as if their fellow tribute did not exist, as if the games had already begun, I know what Hamish means. Presenting ourselves not as adversaries, but as friends has distinguished us as much as the fiery costumes. Tomorrow morning is the first training session. Meet me for breakfast and I'll tell you exactly how I want you to play it, says Hamish to Peter and me. Now go get some sleep while the grown-ups talk. Peter and I walk together down the corridor to our rooms. When we get to my door, he leans against the frame, not blocking my entrance exactly, but insisting I pay attention to him. So Delly Cartwright. Imagine finding her look-alike here. He's asking for an explanation, and I'm tempted to give him one. We both know he covered for me, so here I am in his debt again. If I tell him the truth about the girl, somehow that might even things up. How can it hurt, really? Even if he repeated the story, it couldn't do me much harm. It was just something I witnessed, and he lied as much as I did about Delly Cartwright. I realise I do not want to talk to someone about the girl, someone who might be able to help me figure out her story. Gail would be my first choice, but it's unlikely I'll ever see Gail again. I try to think if telling Peter could give him any possible advantage over me, but I don't see how. Maybe sharing a confidence will actually make him believe I see him as a friend. Besides, the idea of the girl with her maimed tongue frightens me. She has reminded me why I'm here. Not to model flashy costumes and eat delicacies, but to die a bloody death while the crowds urge on my killer. To tell or not to tell. My brain still feels slow from the wine. I stare down the empty corridor as if the decision lies there. Peter picks up on my hesitation. Have you been on the roof yet? I shake my head. Cinna showed me. You can practically see the whole city. The wind's a bit loud, though. I translate this into no one will overhear us talking in my head. You do have the sense that we might be under surveillance here. Can we just go up? Sure, come on, says Peter. I follow him to a flight of stairs that lead to the roof. There's a small dome-shaped room with a door to the outside. As we step into the cool, windy evening air, I catch my breath at the view. The Capitol twinkles like a vast field of fireflies. Electricity in District 12 comes and goes. Usually we only have it a few hours a day. Often the evenings are spent in candlelight. The only time you can count on it is when they're airing the games or some important government message on television that is mandatory to watch. But here there would be no shortage. Ever. Peter and I walk to a railing at the edge of the roof. I look straight down the side of the building to the street, which is buzzing with people. You can hear their cars, an occasional shout and a strange metallic tinkling. In District 12, we'd all be thinking about bed right now. I asked Cinna why they let us up here. Weren't they worried that some of the tributes might decide to jump right over the side, says Peter. What did he say? I ask. You can't, says Peter. He holds out his hand into seemingly empty space. There's a sharp zap and he jerks it back. Some kind of electric field throws you back on the roof. Always worried about our safety, I say. Even though Cinna has shown Peter the roof, I wonder if we're supposed to be up here now, so late and alone. I've never seen tributes on the training centre roof before, but that doesn't mean we're not being taped. Do you think they're watching us now? Maybe, he admits. Come see the garden. On the other side of the dome, they've built a garden with flower beds and potted trees. From the branches hang hundreds of wind chimes, which account for the tinkling I heard. Here in the garden on this windy night, it's enough to drown out two people who are trying not to be heard. Peter looks at me expectantly. I pretend to examine a blossom. We were hunting in the woods one day, hidden, waiting for game, I whisper. You and your father, he whispers back. No, my friend Gail. Suddenly all the birds stopped singing at once, except one, as if it were giving a warning call. And then we saw her. I'm sure it was the same girl. A boy was with her. Their clothes were tattered. They had dark circles under their eyes from no sleep. They were running as if their lives depended on it, I say. For a moment I'm silent as I remember how the sight of this strange pair, clearly not from District 12, fleeing through the woods immobilized us. Later we wondered if we could have helped them escape. Perhaps we might have concealed them. If we'd moved quickly, Gail and I were taken by surprise, yes, but we're both hunters. We know how animals look at bay. We knew the pair was in trouble as soon as we saw them, but we only watched. The hovercraft appeared out of nowhere, I continued to Peter. I mean, one moment the sky was empty and the next it was there. They didn't make a sound, but they saw it. A net dropped down on the girl and carried her up fast, so fast, like the elevator. They shot some sort of spear through the boy. It was attached to a cable and they hauled him up as well, but I'm certain he was dead. We heard the girl scream once, the boy's name, I think. Then it was gone. The hovercraft vanished into thin air, and the birds began to sing again as if nothing had happened. Did they see you? Peter asked. I don't know. We were under a shelf of rock, I reply, but I do know. There was a moment after the bird call, but before the hovercraft, where the girl had seen us. She'd locked eyes with me and called out for help, but neither Gail or I had responded. You're shivering, says Peter. The wind and the story have blown all the warmth from my body. The girl screamed. Had it been her last? Peter takes off his jacket and wraps it around my shoulders. I start to take a step back, but then I let him, deciding for a moment to accept both his jacket and his kindness. A friend would do that, right? They were from here, he asks, and he secures a button at my neck. I nod. They'd had that capital look about them, the boy and the girl. Where do you suppose they were going? He asks. I don't know that, I say. District 12 is pretty much the end of the line. Beyond us, there's only wilderness, if you don't count the ruins of District 13 that still smoulder from the toxic bombs. They show it on television occasionally, just to remind us. And I don't know why they would leave here. Haymitch had called the Avox as traitors. Against what? It could only be the capital, but they had everything here. No cause to rebel. I'd leave here, Peter blurts out. Then he looks around nervously. It was loud enough to hear above the chimes. He laughs. I'd go home now if they let me. But you have to admit the food's prime. He's covered again. If that's all you'd heard, it would just sound like the words of a scared tribute, not someone contemplating the unquestionable goodness of the capital. It's getting chilly. We better go in, he says. Inside the dome it's warm and bright. His tone is conversational. Your friend Gail, he's the one who took your sister away at the reaping. Yes, do you know him? I ask. Not really. I hear the girls talk about him a lot. I thought he was your cousin or something. You favour each other, he says. No, we're not related, I say. Peter nods, unreadable. Did he come to say goodbye to you? Yes, I say, observing him carefully. So did your father. He brought me cookies. Peter raises his eyebrows as if this is news. But after watching him lie so smoothly, I don't give this much weight. Really? Well, he likes you and your sister. I think he wishes he had a daughter instead of a house full of boys. The idea that I might ever have been discussed around the dinner table at the bakery fire just in passing in Peter's house gives me a start. It must have been when the mother was out of the room. He knew your mother when they were kids, says Peter. Another surprise, but probably true. Oh yes, she grew up in town, I say. It seems impolite to say she never mentioned the baker except to compliment his bread. We're at my door. I give back his jacket. See you in the morning then. See you, he says, and walks off down the hall. When I open my door, the red-headed girl is collecting my unitard and boots from where I left them on the floor before my shower. I want to apologise for possibly getting her in trouble earlier, but I remember I'm not supposed to speak to her unless I'm giving her an order. Oh, sorry, I say. I was supposed to get those back to Sinat. I'm sorry. Can you take them to him? She avoids my eyes, gives a small nod, and heads out of the door. I'd set out to tell her I was sorry about dinner, but I know that my apology runs much deeper, that I'm ashamed I never tried to help her in the woods, that I let the capital kill the boy and mutilate her without lifting a finger, just like I was watching the games. I kick off my shoes and climb under the covers in my clothes. The shivering hasn't stopped. Perhaps the girl doesn't even remember me, but I know she does. You don't forget the face of the person who was your last hope. I pull the covers up over my head as if this will protect me from the red-headed girl who can't speak. But I can feel her eyes staring at me, piercing through walls and doors and bedding. I wonder if she'll enjoy watching me die.